Hey guys, welcome back to the Quick and Screw Construction Podcast, where we talk about all the ways to run a successful business in the construction industry. Um, and today we're going to dive into a little bit on commercial subcontracts. So, from a legal perspective, residential contractors and commercial contractors are kind of two different, very different animals. So, I always separate them from a legal perspective because residential contractors, generally speaking, get to write their own contract, get to, generally speaking, make their own terms with their homeowner clients. And even like commercial, when you're hired directly by the owner, you can kind of charge your own terms. Now, when I'm talking about a commercial contractor, I'm talking about a subcontractor who contracts with a general contractor on a big commercial project. Um, which in that situation, the subcontractor who does the work signs a contract that's sent over or produced by the general contractor. And these documents are known for being notorious for being horribly one-sided in favor of the general contractor and the owner, and being nearly impossible to read and understand, even for lawyers, because there's lots of legalese, lots of pages, lots of repetition of saying the same thing over and over again. And as a commercial sub, you really don't have, you have some, but you don't have a lot of negotiation power, right? I think probably now more than ever, commercial subs probably have the best chance they've ever had at pushing back and getting some of the terms changed. But the main thing I want you to do is to understand the agreement that you're signing. I think for years and years, subs have just signed these documents, which is how they have become so one-sided, right? So in the legal profession, attorneys always draft everything very much in favor of their client, thinking that there's going to be a negotiation with somebody on the other side and trying to find the medium, find the middle. Well, that never happened in the commercial subcontract world. Subcontractors just wanted to get the job. They trusted the general contractor. They just wanted to go to work, and so they just signed the document. And so when they did that, all of those very one-sided terms just became the standard because somebody would sign it, we can get away with it, it will just be in there. And if you don't want to sign it, that's fine, then we'll find somebody else. Right? And so that's kind of become the standard in commercial subcontracting. Well, now as there's less and less qualified subcontractors and subcontractors that do a good job, you're really getting a chance to push back and change some of these terms. The first thing you got to do is recognize what terms are in there that are hurtful and what the effects are, right? And so we're going to do a series and dive into the most harmful terms in a commercial subcontract, and understanding what they are, giving you some ideas on negotiating them, and to push back. But at least, at the very least, you'll realize what they are and the ramifications it could have on your business, right? And from a practical standpoint, I'm a lawyer. I'm looking at all the risk. You're the one that's out there working. If you've worked at the same GC for years and never had a problem, it's probably not a problem, right? If you're signing up with somebody new and this is in there, you may want to push back because you're not sure how that they're going to enforce it or how it's going to work. So I say that you have a course of dealing with somebody. I completely understand that. You're also, you're trying to run a business, so you have to go to work. And so where is the middle line? And what are you willing to sign and what are you not willing to sign? What risk are you willing to take and what not you're not willing to take? And that's really a business question for you as a business owner. What I can do is show you where the risks are, right? Here's what these things mean. And then you can decide if you're willing to take the risk or not. And probably one of the most dangerous things in a commercial subcontract is the pay when paid clause, right? And so what does that mean? What does the pay when paid clause mean and how does it affect you? So the pay when paid clause says in the contract is that the general contractor has no obligation to pay the subcontractor until the general contractor is paid by the owner. So what does that mean? That means you, the sub, could do the most excellent, perfect job, be on time, do everything that's required perfectly on time, yet there's no guarantee of payment. Why? Because you have no control over when the owner is going to pay the general contractor, which is what they like to call a condition precedent, meaning this condition has to occur for you to get paid, right? So the condition precedent is the owner has got to pay the general before the general has a requirement to pay you, right? And there's so many things that can go wrong in that relationship that have nothing to do with you, but could still prevent you from getting paid on time, right? And so, I think this is one of the hugest misunderstood thing in commercial subcontracting, because what it could boil down to is that you, the sub, have to front all of the labor and material without getting paid, because technically, if the general contractor doesn't get paid, they don't have an obligation to pay you. And here's the other thing: it doesn't matter if it's the general contractor's fault that they're not getting paid, right? So one of the reasons I wrote the book, Quit Getting Screwed, is because I had a client that lost a case basically because the pay when paid clause was enforced. But what turned out when we dove into everything is that the GC kept submitting the pay applications incorrectly to the owner, which would then delay payment. So even though the GC was causing the delay in payment, which pushed my client out to 90, 120 days, my client had no recourse and no right to stop working in the meantime, right? So when you're signing that commercial subcontract, and it may be the rare situation, do realize that you could have to front the entire cost of labor and material without getting paid if the owner doesn't pay the general, right? And that is a relationship you have absolutely no control over. Is the relationship between the owner and the general. There may be multiple reasons why the owner's not paying the general that are not your fault, and you still would not get paid. So one of the ways to work around a pay when paid clause, if you're in it and it's enforcing you, lien rights, right? You can send an intent to lien, because sometimes in the situation, the owner has paid the general and the general just hasn't paid you, the sub. So sending an intent to lien, and you can always send it early, maybe a good way to shake some money loose to get paid. Or sometimes the general contractor really hasn't been paid, and when you send an intent to lien notice, that gets everybody paid. Gets the general paid, and then the general pays everybody, right? Or your material suppliers. Make sure that your material suppliers are following their lien rights, and usually they have to send notice as well, and so they'll send notice of lien, which will get people paid, right? So even if you have a pay when paid clause, you still have the right to file lien and or send notices that say you're going to file lien if you're not paid. So that's one of the ways to get around the harmful effects when you're in a pay when paid clause. Some steps on negotiating a pay when paid clause if you wanted to push back. This basically takes all of the liability out of the job for the general, so they're really hesitant to let this clause go because it's become a standard, right? So basically the general contractor has no obligation to pay you until they've been paid, so there's no risk there for them in the job, right? They don't have to risk working and not getting paid like you do. And so this is one of probably the most dangerous provisions in there, but probably the one that's least negotiated. So I try to find a way to meet in the middle, right? Something along the lines, if it's been 30 days and the owner hasn't paid the general, and that's due to nothing that you, the sub, have done, that the general contractor will pay you 50%. Or that same situation, the general contractor will pay you the cost to go file a lien, right? Something to, let even out the liability here, because what ends up happening is the people that can at least afford to fund the project end up funding the project because they give their labor and material away and wait to get paid. And if they don't get paid, that means they're financing the job because the owner gets the benefit of their work without paying them. And so this is really one of the most dangerous provisions in a commercial subcontract. Just knowing it exists, knowing that it's in there. Every commercial subcontract you sign as a sub, it's in there. what the effects are, meaning that you could have to cash flow the whole job, your portion of it, without getting paid. Um, and knowing the possible ways to negotiate, I think, are probably the best things that you can do as a commercial subcontractor. But just realizing that even if you don't get paid, you don't necessarily have the right to stop working, especially if the owner just really hasn't paid the general. And where this really gets really effective is in public works projects, right? Because even if you're in the commercial world, they're slow paced sometimes. But if you move over to the public sector, it's even worse. You're looking at a minimum of 90 days before you get paid, and it truly is the government has not paid the general contractor yet, and so he doesn't have an obligation to pay you. So can you float that money for that long? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Can you float that money for 90, 120 days before you actually get paid and before you're actually legally entitled to be paid, even though you did the work correctly? So just something to think about when, especially if you're new to commercial contracting, what this means, how it works, and knowing the risk that you're taking. If I can be of further help, reach out to me on social media, give me a call. I'm around, answer any other questions. We also review subcontracts on a flat fee with a 5 business day turnaround. I think our rates start at $720. If you really want to know what's in the contract that you're signing, CromeensLawFirm.com. We're here to help, help you understand, help you negotiate, whatever you need. All right, guys, wish you the best of luck out there, and have a great day. Thanks.